And I'm going to show you how to make two kinds of kimchi. The most common kind, whole cabbage kimchi, is made with Napa or Chinese cabbage, and it's called beichu kimchi. I'm also going to show you how to make a quick summer kimchi made with stuffed small cucumbers called oiso박이 kimchi. Let's get started. First, I would like to thank my friends Taeyoung and Jaeyoung, who introduced me to Korean cooking and brought me to Jongbu Market to help me get started. Someday I would love to visit Korea myself, but until then I'm lucky to have such a great source for authentic Korean food close by. Korea, like Chicago, has cold winters and hot summers, so if you want to keep your garden vegetables nice, you have to learn how to prepare them. These two recipes are each suited to a different season. Cabbage kimchi, beichu kimchi, is usually prepared in bulk in the fall. Cucumber kimchi, oiso박이, is traditionally a summer recipe, not left to mature, but one that's created and eaten quickly. First, let me say that though this recipe may seem complicated at first glance, there are several steps. It's actually a great weekend afternoon project because each step only takes about 15 or 20 minutes, and you can space them out while you do other things. You do need to plan ahead since it may take a day or two to mature before you can start eating it. But if you make a big gallon jar, it will last you a while, depending on how much you like to eat, of course. I'm going to show you how to make whole cabbage kimchi. Some versions call for chopped cabbage, but I think it's actually more work, and this kind lasts longer. When you select your cabbage, keep in mind the size of the jar you're planning to store it in. If you have a large gallon jar, that's great for the larger heads of cabbage, but otherwise you'll need to look for small cabbages. You can discard any wilted outer leaves and trim any brown part from the bottom of the stem, but be sure to leave enough stem there to hold the cabbage together. The first step for any kimchi is to salt the vegetable. To salt a whole cabbage kimchi, you'll need to cut the cabbage in half lengthwise for smaller ones or into quarters for larger ones. Hold the stem end and fan the leaves out loosely, and sprinkle sea salt between the leaves. Sea salt is coarser than table salt and will wash away better. It is not very expensive if you can buy it in a bag like this one at a Korean market. Sometimes we find it in an Italian or Jewish section of other grocery stores. You don't need to buy expensive sea salt because you're going to wash it away, but you do want coarse salt. You'll need a little bit less than 1/4 cup of salt for every pound of cabbage. A very large cabbage head is usually around 5 pounds. You would use 1 cup of salt on the cabbage itself, and put about 1/4 cup into a cup of water and sprinkle that over the cabbage if you're using a large head. Once all the cabbages are filled with salt, you can sprinkle on that water and salt mixture that I mentioned. Leave it sitting this way for 3 or 4 hours to make sure it becomes fully brined. This will make the cabbage firmer as it pickles. Don't worry about it becoming too salty. You will remove most of the salt as you finish the recipe. You want the texture of the cabbage to be a little bit like a dill pickle, flexible but still crunchy. While your cabbage is soaking is a perfect time to start your filling. You'll need to cook the paste a little bit and give it time to cool off before you start to assemble everything. To start your paste, you put together flour and water. I recommend using sweet rice flour. It has a better texture and flavor, but if you can't get it, go ahead and use wheat flour. For each pound of cabbage, you'll need about 3 tablespoons of water and 1 heaping teaspoon of rice flour. With a large 5-pound head of cabbage, you use 2 tablespoons of rice flour and an even cup of water. Bring the water and flour to a boil on the stove, stirring constantly to keep it smooth. Let it cool for a little bit, then stir in your chili flakes to make it a bright red paste, and add sugar. About 1½ to 2 tablespoons per pound of cabbage. You can add more later to taste if you like. The last hour or so of your soaking time on your cabbage is a good time to keep checking it. Like I said, make sure it's crunchy and a little flexible, like a dill pickle. When it's the right texture, you'll want to take it out, rinse all that salt out, and let it drain for a little bit. This is a great time to begin chopping up your stuffing ingredients. So, what do you want your stuffing ingredients to be? I like to have a balance of colors as well as flavors to make the dish aesthetically pleasing. Different regions of Korea use a lot of different ingredients depending on what's available locally and seasonally. I'm going to give you a list of different stuffing options. Although fish ingredients and nuts are traditional, you might want to avoid them because of allergies or if someone's a vegetarian. If so, especially if you're leaving out the fish ingredients, make sure you add a little bit more salt to balance the other flavors. Salted shrimp and fish sauce provide salt as well as savory flavor, so you don't want to leave that out entirely. It's harder to adjust the balance of your flavors once the kimchi is all assembled, so this is the best time to do a taste test. Do you like the balance of salty, spicy, sweet, sour? Keep in mind that it will become more sour as it matures. Okay, your cabbage is all soaked, your filling is all together. Now it's time to assemble. This is a great time to get out some rubber gloves. The chili flakes are spicy, but they're not as likely to burn your skin as fresh chilies, but they will definitely stain your skin, and possibly your clothes, so keep everything covered. Open up the cabbages again, and smear the stuffing paste in between the leaves and over the outside. Then press the leaves back together to make each section into a tight bundle. Stuff the bundles into your clean jar until every section is done. Use any loose leaves to clean out the bowl and cover the bundles in the jar. Add a little water as you need to clean out the bowl and pour it into the jar. You just want to cover the kimchi. Now you just need to let your kimchi mature, ferment, until it is ready to go into the fridge. I usually cover my jar with plastic wrap and put a rubber band around the plastic wrap before I put the lid on. This gives it an extra tight seal and keeps it from being smelly in the kitchen while it's maturing. You can leave kimchi at room temperature for an afternoon or so if you like it less sour or it's a very hot day, or up to 3 days if you like it more sour. If the room is hot, it will take much less time to become sour. Taste it before you put it into the fridge to see if it seems good. You can mix in a little more sugar or salt or fish sauce to help balance the flavor, though it may be easier to shake it in after you seal the jar if it's really tight. Kimchi can last in the fridge a very long time. Although when you get down to the bottom and it becomes more soft and sour, it's better used in soups or pancakes. I'll explain more about those later. Okay, we've covered the most popular kind of kimchi, beichu kimchi, but I also wanted to show you a more instant, quick and easy kind of kimchi, cucumber kimchi, called oiso박이. It uses some of the same techniques, but it takes much less time to be ready, and it isn't something you want to store long term. So don't make it in huge batches, just enough to use it as a banchan side dish. You will want to use small, firm cucumbers for oiso박이 kimchi. The filling, like cabbage kimchi, requires sea salt, rice flour, chili flakes, and sugar. Other filling ingredients are up to you. Chives, radish, and carrots work well for filler, and garlic, fish sauce, and ginger are good seasoning. Cutting the cucumbers is one of the few tricky steps to this. You'll want to cut them into 3 or 4 inch long pieces, then very carefully cut each cucumber down the middle without cutting it all the way to the end, just making 2 crosswise, carefully holding on to the uncut end of the cucumbers. Stuff about 1 teaspoon of the sea salt into each cucumber. Let it sit like this, all of them together in a bowl for about half an hour to let them crisp. Just like with the other kimchi, you'll want to cook the rice flour and water together to make a paste and add the chili flakes and sugar. Then you'll want to cut your filling ingredients into small pieces. I've done it with longer chunks of chives, for instance, and it was a bit messy to stuff in. I go ahead and use a grater to chop things up very finely. When your cucumbers are finished soaking, rinse away all that salt and let it drain for a little bit. Then gently, holding them again at the uncut end, stuff that filling in, smearing around any extra on the outside. You can serve the cucumber kimchi oiso박이 whole and let people cut them up themselves. They're very attractive when they're stuffed, or you can chop them into smaller bite-sized pieces, but then you lose the stuffing effect. I mentioned that I would say a few more things about how to use old sour kimchi. One of the most traditional ways is kimchi pork soup. It's really good, very spicy and delicious broth. Stir fry it with the pork and then add water to make it into a broth. You can serve it with rice if you find it too spicy. I like to mix in some silken or sun tofu. Or another great recipe is kimchi potato pancakes. The starchy potatoes absorb the spice from the kimchi and really balance the sour, and it's just delicious. If you would like to learn more about Korean cooking, I would recommend any of these 3 cookbooks, or check your local public library bookshop for more options. The first book is Growing Up in a Korean Kitchen by Hu Sushin Heppenstall. This covers family recipes and kitchen lore. The author grew up in a wealthy family in South Korea where they observed traditional customs and enjoyed a kitchen culture similar to royal cuisine. She wrote this book after a trip back to Korea after living in the U.S. for many years. There are no color pictures, but her writing makes the food and her memories come alive. The instructions for cooking are very detailed. Some recipes look much more complicated than they are because she's so careful to explain how and why to do each step. Eating Korean, From Barbecue to Kimchi, Recipes from My Home, is written by Cecilia Haijin Lee. Like Growing Up in a Korean Kitchen, this is part cookbook and part memoir. The author is a younger cook who came to America as a child and describes how her parents learned to cook traditional dishes from the ingredients they could find or grow locally in California. Luckily, we have several fine markets locally that can provide ingredients that may be rare elsewhere in the U.S., but it's great to have the U.S. and Korean perspective. She definitely traveled back to Korea and talks about the food that she experienced there as well as the food that she grew up eating in the U.S. The last cookbook here, The Food and Cooking of Korea by Young Jin Song, like other cookbooks from this publisher, offers beautiful color photos throughout, from an illustrated guide to ingredients and tools at the start to step-by-step photos for every recipe. I found it at a used bookstore, but when I checked online I saw several similar books with slightly different titles by the same author, Young Jin Song, probably just different editions. It doesn't offer quite as much information about each recipe, but it does offer a wider variety than some of the more personal cookbooks. If you'd like to get the recipes for the kimchi soup or the kimchi potato pancakes, I'm going to post those on my blog at thekitchentourist.com. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to email me at thekitchentourist@gmail.com. Good luck with your kimchi!